Shalom, this is Rabbi Klein from the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. The Shabbat immediately preceding Passover is called in rabbinic tradition the Great Shabbat, Shabbat HaGadol. It is customary on this Shabbat for rabbis to deliver an extended sermon, specifically dealing with the laws of Chametz and Matzah or the Seder night. Yet interestingly, there's no consensus concerning what makes this Shabbat, Shabbat HaGadol, what makes this Shabbat so great. I think the key to the riddle seems to deal with that first Passover sacrifice that was given in the land of Egypt. Let's recap. On the 10th day of Nisan, the Jewish people are told by God to take a lamb and then to watch over it until the 14th day of Nisan, when the lamb should be slaughtered. The blood should be affixed upon the doorposts and on the lintels of their homes, and when the angel of death sees the blood on the door, the angel will, quote, pass over the firstborn Hebrew slave and strike down every firstborn Egyptian. According to rabbinic tradition, the actual slaughter of the lamb occurred on a Thursday, and thus, the day upon which the lamb was taken, the 10th day of Nisan, was Shabbat. Now, what makes this Shabbat so instructive? Why should this be Shabbat HaGadol? Furthermore, in previous plagues, God had already distinguished between the Israelites and Egypt. Why did God need a sign here, per se? While the commentaries offer many explanations, I would like to suggest an idea. Many commentaries note, unlike later generations, the taking of the lamb on the 10th day of Nisan was not part of the central ritual. If so, what role did it play, and why would God command them to take this animal days in advance? The key is to understand that unlike other plagues which just happen, this plague includes the active engagement of every Jew, and that begins on Shabbat, when they take this lamb. There are many reasons for the plagues and their educational value, but clearly one audience was the Jewish people themselves. Moses had originally gone before Pharaoh, not to ask for their freedom, but just respite from work so they could go into the desert and worship God. Pharaoh, who saw himself as a god, simply saw this request as one for time off that would impact his bottom line. He neither recognized God nor the people's relationship with their God. Similarly, Shabbat was not a day dedicated to the worship of God and higher values, but a day off from what should be their central purpose in life, serving Pharaoh. In Moses' first meeting with Pharaoh, Pharaoh says, the people of the land are already so numerous, and now you would have them cease from their work? The word in Hebrew, v'ishpatetem, would have them cease, is the same root as Shabbat. In this one line, Pharaoh tells Moses and the Jewish people that he is their God, and they have no existence outside of Pharaoh. Given this context, the message of this Shabbat before the plague of the firstborn was clear to everyone. This was not a day off from Pharaoh's imposed labor, reflecting laziness, but it was becoming a day prepared for worship. They publicly took the Shabbat day as a day of demonstration, signaling to all their loyalty to God. Rabbi David Tzvi Hoffman remarks that the Passover sacrifice is akin to the daily sacrifices that would later be offered in the temple, which affirm a daily relationship with God. In our example, the nature of the Passover offering was like the Thanksgiving offering, in Hebrew called a todah. This sacrifice is offered in gratitude for salvation, and in our case, the upcoming liberation. Thus, the taking of the lamb in full daylight on Shabbat was a political rebellion, quote, freeing themselves from the enslavement of man and directing their worship towards God. They were signaling to not only God and the Egyptians, but themselves. They were ready to live a more exalted life defined by service to God. The rabbis tell us that taking this lamb in broad daylight was a political risk, as the lamb was seen as a god by the Egyptians. Therefore, slaughtering the lamb would be an active rejection of their idolatry, like smashing their idols. The Midrash elaborates that throughout the Shabbat day, the Egyptians asked what the Israelites were doing. And upon telling them that they were going to sacrifice these lambs, It was a miracle that the Egyptians did not respond violently. After 9 plagues, the Egyptians were simply silenced and dumbstruck. Nonetheless, this taking of the land was an act of bravery, of dedication. The taking of the blood and putting it on the doorposts and on the lintels is seen by the Italian commentator Umberto Cassuto as the readiness of the Jewish people to even sacrifice themselves for their beliefs. Interestingly, in this complex ritual of the Paschal Lamb, a critical component is missing: the altar. In Jewish cultic law, depending upon the sacrifice, different parts were placed upon the altar, and the blood, representing the life force, was spilled on the corners of the altar. Here, the only blood spilled is on the doorposts and the lintels, and these facts provide the key. The altar was the home itself, the family unit. In following the commandments of this first Passover, the Jewish people demonstrated that they were ready to dedicate themselves to this new mission. They were to become servants of God and not servants of Pharaoh. Given this, we can understand the true reason that the angel passed over the houses of the Jewish people. It wasn't simply that an angel saw blood, but the angel saw the significance of the blood. The blood represented the existential commitment of the Jewish people to their new future. It was this commitment that distinguished between the firstborn of the Jews and the firstborn of the Egyptians. In this act, the Jewish people displayed their readiness to enter a covenantal relationship with God. It was the first mitzvah that they observed. Unlike other plagues, the last plague called for the Jewish people to act themselves. You can take a people out of Egypt, but you can't take Egypt out of the people. They need to do this willingly. Moses commands them, Mishchu uchu, pull back and take for yourself a lamb for each house. The Midrash teaches, pull back from your idolatrous ways, and only afterwards take the Paschal lamb for yourself. Many people take Judaism as a given in life, something they do not need to earn. Perhaps they even take their Judaism for granted. The story of the Passover sacrifice teaches that for the people to be liberated, to become the Jewish people, they need to make existential commitments. They need to be ready to make sacrifices, and they need to be ready with their staffs in hand to move forward into the unknown desert, an unknown future. Many people complain that Judaism is simply not accessible and that we need to create entryways that are welcoming. This is undeniably true. But a welcoming gesture without any real sacrifice or expectation is probably a Judaism not worth living for. For over 400 years, the Jewish people were in pain, but at the same time they were slumbering. According to many rabbis, they forgot who they were. And taking the lamb on the 10th of Nisan, they demonstrated they were ready for a new journey, a new beginning, a new future. This Shabbat for them, therefore, was a spiritual awakening. It was a great Shabbat. What will be the discrete things we will do in our Jewish life to signal that we too are ready for the journey? What sacrifices will we make? Shabbat Shalom.